I'm Krista, and this is Dave Foster, and we're here to help you be a better landlord. I am so thrilled to once again have the wonderful Dave Foster on the show. Dave, you've been on before to talk about 1031 exchanges. We had a real riot when you were here, so really wonderful to have you back.
Hey, I am so happy to be back. If for no other reason than I want your producer, Mike, to teach me how to do that thumbs up thing he just did on screen. That's amazing. See, I'm learning things from you guys.
That's what we're all about here at TurboTenant and Be a Better Landlord. We want everyone to be better at everything. So very thrilled to hear it. I can arrange a special session for him to show you the works after this. But could you remind the audience of your real estate expertise and why you're here today?
Yeah, so I'm a frustrated serial real estate investor with a touch of ADD. So I've never met a real estate deal I didn't like, I didn't want to make. And along the way, I discovered a tool called the 1031 exchange, which allows me to sell investment real estate and then use the proceeds to go buy new investment real estate. And I get to indefinitely defer paying tax on the profits. I'm a degree accountant, and I never had heard of this. As a matter of fact, the sum total of my college education on 1031 exchanges was one half of one class period. And
Wow.
yet it has changed and shaped my whole life as an investor. And about 25 years ago, we started a company to be able to do this for others because we saw the power. So I'm a real estate investor. I'm also a qualified intermediary for 1031s because I do them for myself and I believe in them.
I mean, that's amazing. There's no better testimonial than that, right? One of the things that I'm really excited to get your opinion on is a question that comes up from the audience all the time, which is just how do you navigate a downturn market? What do you do to make the most of your investments in a market that otherwise might have you feeling anxious, nervous, hesitant to make deals?
Every real estate market is very predictable. It's just the way that the federal monetary policy acts, the way that real estate markets in general act, are all just very consistent. And the problem is you can't predict when something's going to happen or where a particular submarket is going to explode. So, one of my difficulties is in thinking about what a downturn market is. Because in my mind, and again, this is Dave, the crazy investor, I've never met a market I didn't love. I just had to find different ways to make it work for me. Now, what's our status today if we're coming out, mid 2024, which is, where we're at right now. We've got an area of higher interest rates. Appreciation in most places is starting to stagnate. And because we have a truckload, that's an industry term, by the way, a truckload of people who bought at the absurdly low 2.5 to 1.9% interest rates. We're starting to see, I think you called it, well, you called it golden handcuffs. I would love to sell this property, but no way am I giving up a 2.5% loan. And that starts to stagnate a market, doesn't it? Because if I'm buying with new interest money, I'm having to make sure my numbers work, which means I have to increase rents. To increase rents, I have to see an increase in the labor force and an increase in wages. And I think we're kind of seeing the disaster that's playing out right now in California with going to $20 for fast food. It's not increasing anybody's well being, it's just shutting down businesses. So, all of these things play into the macro real estate market. So, how to navigate them? The best advice I ever give my clients is take a look at what the market is telling you. Like I kind of say, I'm fond of saying that because it really does have a voice. It's got its own personality and it will tell you what you need to do. You just have to listen. But when you listen to it, do the hardest thing you have to do first. Get that out of the way. Now, 5 or 6 years ago when all of our lovely California friends were selling their properties and they could put it on the market and have 50 showings that first day, 5 overpriced offers with a 7-day cash close. And yet inventory was at an all-time lows for purchase. What was the hardest thing to do for a 1031 exchange? To find your new property. So we counsel clients, find your new property first. Get it under contract, even before you list or sell your old property. Because the 1031 exchange, you have to close the sale of your property before you take title to your new property. But you can be under contract either way. So wrap up your new property. Today, what does that look like now that it's stagnating just a little bit? It's still a tight buying market, but we're finding clients having a lot of success, not so much with contingency offers, but telling someone, I'm doing a 1031 exchange, my property's under contract, and by the way, I'll give you an extra $10,000 in earnest money.
Wow.
So you try to motivate the seller to let you get that contract to buy because you know you're going to get your old property sold. Now, if we truly are in a downturn market at some point in time, first of all, there'll be tears coming down our eyes. But
Sure.
what that's going to mean is that the hardest thing to do is to sell your old property. Finding your new property is going to be easy because there's going to be inventory everywhere and everybody's going to be willing to make a deal with you. So in that case, it's the old adage of cash is king. Get your old property sold however you need to. And then when that cash is sitting in your 1031 exchange account, you just start talking to buyers, to sellers, one at a time, because that will be the easy part of it, because you've taken care of the hard part. And probably the hardest thing to navigate in that sense is the idea of how much can I reduce my selling price? Because I don't like to do that. That means less money in my pocket, right? The factor you want to keep into consideration there is that you may have to sell your property for less than you think it's worth. But guess what? You're going to be buying properties for much less than those sellers think they're worth. And so the 1031 exchange kind of has a self-leveling effect. People that I talk to that are frustrated wanting to do a 1031 exchange, I can't do it because I can't find any property that's cheap. Well, you're never going to find a property as cheap as you bought that one. It's unrealistic. But you're going to find a property, if you're a good investor, that's a good deal. And so by taking care of the hard thing first, that allows you to do that. Now, probably the last key for what we have our investors do is to try to mitigate borrowing money. And in a 1031 exchange, typically you will have to borrow money because you have to purchase at least as much as you sell. And so unless you own it for cash or you have cash, you're going to have to borrow some money to be able to purchase your new property. But you can allocate your proceeds any way you want. So what a lot of PR people will do, let's use a real example. You're selling a property for $500,000 that has a $200,000 mortgage on it. So you have $300,000 of cash, and to complete the 1031 exchange, you need to buy $500,000 of real estate. Well, some of our clients might buy one property for $250,000 cash, free and clear. No mortgage, no need to pay the mortgage costs, no need to have 7 or 8% hanging over your head. You can make that puppy cash flow from day one. And then they'll take the other $50,000 and they'll use that as a 20% down payment on another $250,000 property. Now, it's not going to cash flow as good as the other one, but you were able to use the combination of the two to meet your reinvestment requirements. And you also get the amortization of that loan. You get the depreciation on both. You have two properties instead of one. So you've already sheltered yourself against a downturn for landlords. But most importantly, you have a free and clear property over here where the equity is concentrated. And at any time you want to, let's say all of a sudden the Fed dropped interest rates 2 points. You could go do a cash out refinance at a better rate and take that money to go buy your next property.
Wow.
But meanwhile, it's not costing you anything. And that's how you get around high interest rates.
I mean, incredible. It sounds very logical. I love how you pointed out paying attention to what the market is saying, because I think that's something that often gets missed, especially for newer investors who are trying to break into the space. They're getting down into the details, but they're not zooming out and seeing the picture of what the market is actually presenting them. How might you recommend someone new do that?
You know, sometimes you have to kind of put blinders and earmuffs on
Sure.
because someone once said opinions are like people's rear ends. Everybody's got one and they all stink. But
True.
just about everybody's going to have an opinion or an idea of what has worked for them.
Mhm.
What you have to do is sift through that and say, is that what has worked for them? Because this is where they were, this was their location, this was the point that the market was at. I'm over here in a different location, in a different situation, in a different time of the market. So you definitely have to talk to not just everybody from one place or group. You've got to broaden to get access to a bunch of different people, access to folks like yourself who are nationwide. You know, at TurboTenant, you've got your ears on the ground in tons of markets. So you can help people navigate through that. Definitely, that's a for sure. And I would say always, always, always educate yourself. I love that right now, and maybe it's just the algorithms for me, but every time I open up YouTube, Warren Buffett is telling me, do this one thing and it won't cost you anything. And the one thing that he's saying is educate yourself. That's the cheapest thing you can do to build your wealth. So here's my recommendation, two recommendations for books for your folks.
Yes.
And they're like seventh and eighth grade level reads, which means I was able to understand them. Thank heavens. And they're by a guy named Richard Marbury. And they are Whatever Happened to Penny Candy. And it is literally the best treatise I have ever read on monetary inflation and its impact on the US economy. It makes more sense than any congressman I have ever heard. It
Love
is
that.
awesome. Whatever happened to penny candy? We think about, have you ever walked in a grocery store and seen those machines?
Mhm.
They're not a penny anymore, are they?
No, 25 cents, 50 cents, 75.
And that's the principle. But he deals with it in terms of actually putting in the reference of monetary policy. And that will help you to understand financially why things are happening in the market. He's got a second book that he wrote called The Clipper Ship Strategy. Now, do you remember the Clipper Ship phenomena?
I can't say that I do. What was that?
So this was back in the 1800s, where the only way to get goods from the industrial centers of the Northeast was through these very fast ships going around Cape Horn and coming up to San Francisco. And they were called the Clipper ships because literally fortunes were made based on who could be the fastest ships to turn around. And literally, I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars could be
Wow.
won or lost based on a 6 hour delivery interval for that many thousands of miles. Crazy thing. What people don't understand is that phenomena only happened for over a course of about 2 years, because then the railway was completed and that changed everything. So we now had an intercontinental railway. But during that period of time, there was some remarkable things that happened to American commerce because of the clipper ship strategy. And this is a book on how to find where the government is investing. Because if you want to know where there's extra money, It's wherever the government is investing. And I've made it a practice throughout my life. I go find where the government is investing money, and that's where I invest because that's
Smart.
where people are moving. That's where people are working. That's where people have disposable income. And that's where they're buying and renting houses.
Wow, those are brilliant tips. We will be sure to include the links to those books down in the bio so everyone can check them out. I mean, just they sound like fascinating reads, and it's obviously paid off really well for you.
It's been really good. Yeah, it's a fun practice. And again, they were written very easy to understand. Thank heavens.
Love that. I need that sometimes, you know. All right, Dave, any other tips that you would give for people trying to navigate a downturn market, or even maybe expanding their definition of what a downturn market is?
Patience. Be patient. There's no reason to act hastily. And although, I mean, I almost get nauseous saying this, sometimes it's okay to pay tax. If you
Whoa.
absolutely cannot find the right deal to invest in, don't complete the 1031 exchange. There's no penalty for starting and not completing it. If
Mm.
you sell your property and start a 1031 exchange, you 45 days later, you can't find a property, you simply let it go away. You're going to pay the same tax you would have at the same time you would have, but you're not going to get stuck with a property you don't like. So you lose the compounding, you pay some tax. But the last time I checked, nobody ever went broke by paying tax on profit. It just
Mm.
feels like it,
Yeah,
right? And so,
yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, because I think ultimately it's not the deal that you don't get that kills you. You be patient, wait for the right one, because the deal that kills you is the one that you do get that you really shouldn't have.
Wow. Wise words, a perfect spot to wrap things up. Dave, once again, it has been lovely to have you. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Where can the people find you, and who do you work with? Is it anybody in the nation who reaches out? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, we are a nationwide qualified intermediary. So the
Wonderful.
IRS requires that when you do a 1031 exchange, you have to use someone like us. We're kind of like Switzerland. We're everybody's buddy, and you
Mhm.
have to use us. So we do operate nationwide, and we work with any investors. I don't care if you're selling a $10,000 lot or a $50 million hotel. We can help you save tax dollars doing that. So we have set up our website at the1031investor.com specifically to be educational. We have a YouTube channel, backslash the 1031 investor with 50 some videos on it. We have calculators, articles, ways to contact us to have phone conversation with us directly. And I've written a book called Lifetime Tax Free Wealth, the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the 1031 Exchange. You know, I guarantee you, it's not as good as Richard Marbury's, but I did put a lot of case studies in it so you can actually see how real people have navigated these different situations.
Absolutely beautiful. So just a treasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. If you have any thoughts about navigating a downturn market or questions for Dave, please leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also check out Dave's YouTube channel. You are going to learn so much. I know I do.